Hair, Love, Radio.
You're listening to Hair Love Radio, where we get into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to make your dreams a reality, start unlocking your potential, and live your best life, helping hairstylists, creatives, and girl bosses spread their awesome and light like confetti. You were made for awesome. Hi, welcome back to Hair Love Radio. I am your host, Elizabeth Faye. I am here with my friend, business coach, and the badass Danny J.
Ooh, I'm so glad to be back on Hair Love Radio.
We're so glad you're back.
Thank you. And I love that we're up in Utah getting ready for the Hair Love Club events.
Yes.
Exciting.
Park City's beautiful right now. It is fall time. The leaves are changing. And we're in a house with some inspiring women this weekend.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm so excited to meet all the girls. I got up at 4 a.m, and so I just got up from a nap. So I got to go be social.
And you look so pretty. By the way, she did her hair and makeup before her nap, and she woke up like Sleeping Beauty. So thanks for waking up and being here on the podcast.
In case my prince came and to kiss me waking up or something.
You never know.
Yeah.
Your prince might be like a girl boss in this house.
Right.
But that's fine too. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of princes, we're going to be talking about divorces. What a great segue that is.
I didn't even plan that. So both of us have been through a divorce and had to work and run our companies.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about what it's like to get a divorce and run a company and like survive.
You know what's funny? I know Elizabeth knows my story a little bit more than most people, but I had one of these marriages that honestly was the kind of marriage that people would always ask, like, what's your secret? And you guys are so great together, and we were each other's best friends, and we were business partners. And so this kind of would have been a topic that on a podcast I probably would have skipped through right before we got on. She said that people can skip through, but I think it would have been something I just would have thought, no, that's never going to happen to me. And unfortunately, if it does, you have to kind of figure out and manage your own ways to get through it. And so there's really no handbook on how to cope, right? There's all these like how to plan a wedding and we have all these big things on how to get married, but nobody shows you how to undo all of that. Yeah. And if we're looking at the majority of statistics, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Supposedly, I don't know. I've seen less, I've seen more. And I know in different industries, it's less and more than that. But still, it's a good portion of us that go through it, or at least 100% of us know someone who has.
Yeah.
So
it's funny that so many of us go through this, but it's still, you feel very isolated, you feel very alone, and it feels like, I mean, it's a failure. It is. Totally. I mean, it's not, but it is. You know what I mean? And the marriage did come to an end, which was obviously never the goal.
Right.
Whether it's a good or bad thing.
Well, I think this is just to give a reason for other people to listen to, because there's a lot of pieces in here where I think that if I had support or people knew what I was going through, it would have helped. And
I 100% agree.
I think it's something that you can actually relate to even if you've never been through a divorce, because loss is a loss. This could even relate, honestly, to death of a loved one or losing somebody, because it can be that deep and painful. So, yeah, so we both went through around the same time too, so you were really helpful for me, but you knew my situation was a little different, but ultimately it's different and the same.
Yeah, well, I felt like as soon as I had come up for air, you started drowning, which was actually good to be your friend, because I don't think I could have really been any positive help in your life while I was drowning. I probably would have been like, let's get drunk and cry, which can be helpful during that too. But I was probably able to be more of a positive influence.
Yeah, you know what's funny about using the drowning analogy is that I was talking to another divorced guy, somebody I was dating actually, and we were just, I don't even know, we were probably just rambling on. And I said, it's kind of like if you were getting on the Titanic. It doesn't matter if you were on the like lower class or if you were first class and at the top of the boat, you were still all going down with the same ship.
Oh my God, I love
that. So I was like, because I was thinking, well, our marriage was good and other people were fighting all the time. It was like, it didn't matter if you have a good one or a bad one. We were still having the same outcome. And so honestly, it just felt like, we're all going down with the same ship.
No, I remember when I found out you guys were getting a divorce, I was heartbroken. Yeah. Like, and I'm sure, and every marriage is different. I feel like when I got divorced, people were like, oh yeah, okay. Like there was no surprise. So obviously everyone's divorce is so different. But
Yeah. So let's talk about, I know you mentioned the one feeling of failure. I want, for people who don't know, and maybe just for other people who have gone through it, like those feelings, because I think they're really, I don't know, universal across the board. What were some of the things you were feeling that maybe, was it like, were you feeling failing in the marriage? Were you embarrassed?
so I actually grew up Mormon, LDS. And so I grew up very religious. And so we made a lot of religious vows when we were married. And it was, I mean, marriage is a huge commitment, but it had this whole nother layer to it. And so I was not only feeling as like a wife who was vowed to love someone for, you know, my life, but for time and all eternity with this religious layer added. And so I was failing as a member of my church. I was failing as a wife. I felt like I was failing as a woman. And to add a fun new layer, I had a 1-year-old. So I was failing as a mother of this child. And really, I was a girl. I was so young. I think I was 21 when I got divorced.
Yeah.
Or 22. Really young. And so it was just very overwhelming. And then the last thing I had that I hoped not to fail at was my business. It was all I had left. And so I just prayed to God that I wouldn't fail at that too. And not only is there the whole layer of like, if I do fail, I don't feed my child. So it was just, you know, a big overwhelming thing of failure. And I remember a therapist saying to me, because I kept trying to find some justification or some reason for it, or like I wanted something like really, really big and nasty and bad to happen at the end of our marriage. And there were stuff that like now looking back, I do think was really big and nasty and bad, but it wasn't like, I was comparing it to other people's nasty and bad. And I remember him saying to me, because I was like, well, maybe I'm less of a failure if like, you know, I'm not even going to say the horrible things because they're all different. But if something like X, Y, or Z happened, then I wouldn't feel like a failure. And he said, poison is poison, bad is bad. And you can't compare one person's migraine or cancer or whatever disease to another. And bad is bad. And there's no such thing as like, hey, my heart is harder than your heart, because we're both experiencing these in different realities and at different times. And if it's hard, and it's what you feel and it's valid. And if it's not okay to you, then it's not okay. Yeah. And so that was a moment for me during my divorce when he said to me, poison is poison is poison. And I was like, oh, okay.
You can have a little drop of cyanide in your coffee and die, or you can drink the gallon of bleach and die. It's the same thing,
and it didn't have to be what I deemed as bad enough. And it just wasn't okay for me, and it wasn't working.
I remember when you were going through it, we had just become friends earlier that year before, and I'd come to your salon and get my hair done, and we were talking about different things, and you kept saying, well, maybe and there were things you were saying, like, maybe if I just change, maybe if I pull back, maybe if I don't do as much here. And I was like, Elizabeth, this is what you're made for, and what you've built today, which just goes to show how much you were built for and made this, like, you never would have done this. You were almost thinking, well, I need to be less because it like threatens him. And that was interesting because it is hard. And I would imagine many women feel that way. And especially listening to this podcast, who are like girl bosses, who have really big goals, big dreams. And maybe they feel like, gosh, if I just don't go for my goals as much, then maybe I could save this marriage. And it's a very valid concern. But like you said, poison is poison. And it was like, okay, but it's not going to get better. Oh, yeah. and
watering down my meanness, your you-ness. I mean, actually, I have never shared this before, but I went through a phase where I had this very interesting therapist that said some things to me that now, going through a lot of therapy and life coaching, I don't think was okay to say. But he pretty much told me to stay in my place as a woman, and I did. I mean, I was married and vowed for time and all eternity. I had a child, and so I watered down me, and I watered down my dreams, and I watered down my voice. I'm a very vocal, I got shit to say, okay? Clearly, I got a podcast. And so I think I can talk and talk and talk. And so I did that. I remember, trying to be less and less and less so he could feel more and more and more, and it never got better. Yeah. And I realized that me being less of me isn't serving anyone. Yeah. It's hurting me.
Yeah. I think I remember you tried being less for just a little bit, and I was like, it wasn't better, and I was like, it's not you. And it was a struggle too as a friend to see you going through it, because I didn't really understand all of the intricacies or what was going on with you and your ex-husband, but I could see how it was affecting you. And just to come out on the other side and watch you as a business owner and just the awesome chick that you are.
Sorry, read
The awesome chick that you are. It's amazing to see that during the hardships you were still able to build your salon and get everything going. So I think for me during that time, you know, my husband had an affair. It came completely out of the blue. It was really shocking. It was short-lived. And unfortunately, he like fell in love with this girl and suddenly was like, I want to marry her. And
it was completely out of the blue.
Yeah.
You like had a feeling, saw his phone, and it was like life exploded.
Yes. It was so out of the blue. And it was also one of those things like logistically, how could I have known? We lived in a town that was, 20 miles from any other thing. We worked together. We were around each other all the time. So logistically, even, it seemed impossible. And he just wasn't that kind of person. I remember telling a friend, I know that my husband will never cheat on me because he's so loyal and he's such a bad liar. And he was so loyal and he was a bad liar. And I remember friends like, wow, the way he looks at you, he adores you. And he did. And what I know today that I didn't know then is that affairs are very complex. And there's a woman named Esther Perel who has a book called The State of Affairs Now. And she talks about how some people will fall into an affair in a happy marriage, generally out of some kind of big tragedy, maybe like a death or just something along those lines. And there were some things going on in the family that year. And so I can see how that contributed to it. It's not an excuse for it. But how it affected me, I mean, I didn't eat for a week.
I remember that.
And I couldn't. I was just crying. And thank God I didn't have any real big things to do, but I did have an event about 3 weeks later I had to show up for. And it's one of those things where it's almost like you want to just hide in a hole and cry and drink and avoid the world and close the blinds and stay in your pajamas, but you still have people who need you. And it's not just like running a business. It's literally you have clients, you have people who you need to show up for, you have employees, you have all of these things going on and you can't just stop. And I think that probably, maybe you could say this for yourself, is that a little bit of my work saved me during that point because it gave me a reason to get up. I can't say that I didn't stop doing some things because I did for a while. I mean, I was doing a lot of lives. Back then it was Periscope, but like Facebook Lives.
Oh my gosh, Periscope. What happened to Periscope?
We just disappeared. I was doing things like Facebook Live kind of things, and I stopped that for a while because I felt that I couldn't show up without people noticing. So there were definitely things that I fell back on. But ultimately, I think kind of having people to, I don't know, I guess, show up for kept me from going down like the spiral black hole.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you're someone who's going through this, it's okay to have grace on yourself. Like, I just think that it's okay to forgive yourself for some things. Because during that phase of your life, whether it is a death or divorce, and to me, divorce felt like death. And I think a lot of people feel like that. And I don't say that insensitively at all. Like, it was literally like something you are so committed to is gone and it's dead and it's no longer. And if you haven't been through it, you might be like, how is that possible? Yeah. But it's okay to not be okay for a while. And I think that's good to hear. And obviously you still have to show up for things, but I had to really like allow myself to like go through it and feel it. And definitely work got me through. And I had already launched my education company in 2015, which was like taking off full like speed ahead. So it wasn't like the world's best timing. Not that divorce ever is, but I had to just like allow myself to like be okay that like I wasn't the best mom. Like I was there, but like not mentally, and not emotionally. And that's okay.
I love that you said that it's okay to be okay, because I think maybe people can think, well, you launched that, so you just powered through, but I think you did allow yourself to have the feeling. I know I did. I would let myself cry, and I would make sure that I would do things for like self-care. I actually, for the first week, because I couldn't eat, I made almost like this pact with myself. It was just like almost a subconscious decision that every day I need to at least get up, do my hair, put on some makeup, and leave the house. I had nowhere to go.
I love that, though,
So-
that you, like, gave yourself something, though.
I did. I had to get out because I was afraid I would just stay in my pajamas all day and I had nowhere to go. I put on makeup and I cried it off, but it was fine. And I would literally just get in the car and drive around St. George. And sometimes I just sit in a park and cry. But I at least got up every day and like looked okay.
Yeah.
Because I felt like if I didn't look it, I would just fall apart even more. And that helped me. It was just like one thing a day. And I remember it was maybe 2 weeks later, I go, oh my gosh, I only cried 3 times today instead of all day. And then soon it was like, okay, I've only cried once today. And then it was, oh, I've only cried every other day. And soon, like, you know, I really believe time heals and having friends heals. But I allowed myself, I didn't just ignore it and go through the motions and just like get to work and put my head down. I allowed myself to feel it. And I think that was really important. And I look back on that time with such compassion for myself, like,
And love.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if you're going through it, like, it does get better. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And you can even look back on my Instagram through probably 2015, 2016. If you look back, you can tell I'm going through a divorce by, like, the quotes I'm posting.
Yeah.
And you just have to feel those feelings. It does get better. There's so much darkness. And I just remember thinking, like, it would never end. And my divorce carried on for quite some time, and it got pretty toxic and very emotionally and mentally harmful. And I didn't feel safe in my life. It was really bad, and it was really dark.
Yep.
And like just hearing you talk about those park cries, I mean, I just remember sobbing in the shower till I would gag and gag and gag. And I had this 1-year-old little boy in the other room, and I'm just like, how the fuck am I going to do this? And you just do. You just one step at a time, one day at a time. And I have had some friends say back to me, because it happened when I launched my education company, which was hair painting and business social media classes in 2015. And they just like took off like wildfire. And I mean, in a 12-month period, we brought in $500,000 in sales in a website I made myself off of like this ghetto PayPal thing. So it really just like crazily took off. And I wasn't powering through. I just kind of didn't have a choice. I had to like feed my kid, pay for a divorce, which everyone knows is expensive. And I look back with such grace and honestly gratitude to God and the universe for allowing my business to take off and help me pay for what I had to. Like, I just have so much gratitude for that period of my life. But yeah, I mean, it's okay to be a mess. It's kind of the only way. I literally remember trying not to cry in hair painting workshops, like a lot.
I bet.
How do you show up and like tell other people like everything's great, your business is awesome, and all you want to do is like fall apart?
Yeah.
So
I have a friend, Natalie Hodson. She's amazing, and you know, is a speaker, and she has this an amazing business online with like fitness products, pre and postpartum things. And she was going through it and had children as well. And I have to say, like, props to any woman going through this with children on top of it, because that's, like you said, like, I've got a 1-year-old. You've got other responsibilities. I repeatedly was thinking, oh my gosh, if I have kids, I don't know. If we had kids, I don't know what I'd do. I felt like I would have neglected them completely. I don't know how I would have handled it. But I think one thing that she had her business kind of take off as well. And so I had another layer of shame for me, because my business was just like, after about 6 months, just went on pause. I just like stopped a lot of things. There was a lot of growth that was happening right before. And I think subconsciously too, almost to the point, and I didn't even realize this till just right now, to where I maybe subconsciously thought maybe if I wasn't being as much me, oh my God, that was
nuggets.
one of the reasons that he did what he did, because there was a lot of you know, him not feeling good enough because I was kind of like the star and things were taking off.
I remember that. I remember us talking about that.
Yeah. I didn't even think about it till literally
Well, and you
just
probably
now.
did on some subconscious level water yourself down, because I remember for so long you were hoping you guys would get back together. You're like, this is not permanent.
Yep. And it was a good 10 months before we finally pulled the trigger, and I thought we would get back together, and I totally watered myself down, and my business really is me, and I am my brand. And so I stopped doing a lot of things. I was basically just treading water. And I want people to like give themselves grace in this too. And this is why I brought it up, is sometimes it may look like like sometimes these tragedies can propel you forward, and you just like you said, it could come out of nowhere. It could just gift from the universe. Like, I didn't think I'd be able to get through this. And I know Natalie Hudson had this amazing, like, she just she was not even knowing how she's going to make any money, and then her business did $1 million the next year.
Yeah, which on a smaller scale is kind of what happened to me.
Yeah, and so
thank God I had a kid. I'm like, what the heck?
I know. Now I'm like, shoot. Now I wish I had
yeah.
a kid to like push me
Oh my
instead of
gosh.
just standing still and doing nothing.
No, but I like that our stories are different because
Yeah.
there's different people listening to this.
Totally.
And our divorces were so different. Our outcomes were so different
Yeah.
that at the end of the day, it's all okay now.
It is. And for me, I look back and go, you know what? I didn't destroy everything. I was just treading water. Sometimes let's just say we're swimming in a marathon and maybe you got to take a break, and my head was still above water, barely. I'd fall down a few times and like suck wind, but I was just treading water. And that's how it really felt, is like, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm just trying to stay afloat. And sometimes it's all you can do in your business is just to stay afloat. Keep your clients at a minimum. Don't take extra. Keep things going. Like, don't destroy everything. But sometimes your self-care is taking up so much of your time that you just got to tread water.
Well, and that's a season. It's fine. And I think we
Yes.
have to allow ourselves to have these seasons. And if you are someone who, maybe you took self-sabotaging behaviors a little bit farther during divorce, that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
Have grace. There is never a point of like no return whatsoever, because if you dive deeper into Danny's stories and mine, we have definitely
Oh yes, we have.
there are moments where we have had to hit ground zero and start over. So
Yeah, I mean, you know what? This is, and the way I look at it now, is I think one of the most beautiful opportunities you have to reinvent yourself. So I used to love back to school, and this is the fall, so it's like such a great time. You see all this stuff in schools, but I remember going to like a new school and like, ooh, I can wear brand new outfits. I can have a new fashion. I can be a brand new person because nobody knows me.
That is so true about divorce.
Yeah.
I felt that way too.
It's like nobody knows me here at the school. And so it's a time where you go, you know what? I can take off the old me and just create a brand new version of yourself, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally. I mean, I started working out again. I kind of lost that part of myself. I've had so many people like, you look so much prettier. And I'm like, I look at old pictures and I go, I do look prettier. I started taking better care of myself, dressing nicer, getting new hobbies and activities, because when you're with someone, you don't have as much time to do that. And I think it's an amazing time that you can, when you get through the hurt, when you get through the pain, when you're working on yourself, you have a beautiful opportunity to completely reinvent yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And that when you're in that state, that's exciting, that moves you forward. It's motivating, it's fulfilling, and that might be the only thing that's getting you through it. And that's fine.
That's for damn sure. I want to say one more thing too about anybody who has to move back home with their parents. I do a podcast as well, and this woman wrote in, and we have some deep conversations on the Best Life podcast. And we go a lot into infidelity because that's what happened in my marriage. So we've had all sides of the coin. And one woman wrote in, and she was the one who cheated on her husband. And she just felt guilt and shame. And while some people might go, well, good for her, of course she should, there's layers to all of it. And if you hear the whole thing, you could see why you can see that side of the story. And in any side, I think the guilt and shame never really helps. Sometimes it feels like maybe you're justified by staying there, or even anger. I think a lot of divorce can bring up anger, but the best thing you could do is work on yourself while you're working through your business. And you know what the best thing is things like podcasts like these, personal development podcasts, books. You can do that stuff. Like, working on personal development always helps your bottom line in your business. I think going through this stuff actually is probably going to 10x my business in the future going forward, because of the resilience that I've gotten from it, going through the hard things, knowing what I can do, like I can do hard things, and just the lessons I learned because I was working so hard on me. Now I'm a stronger and better version of me, to be a better boss, to be a better leader, to be a better speaker, to be a better, all of the boss things.
I love that. I remember like going back to that when I was at a bar with you and we were talking and you said to me, well, all of my favorite people have been through really shitty things, so this is just going to make you even cooler. Yeah. And I kind of like laughed because I'm like, okay, I hope so. But it's true. It gives you layers. It gives you depth. It gives you empathy, sympathy. It gives you strength, resilience. And so it can be such a gift if you let it be. Every hard thing that happens to you, you really can turn around and add to it. And I don't know, maybe this will work for you. I listen to the Stronger quite a bit the whole time, like crying in my car, but just sobbing, makes me that much stronger.
We all have that divorce song or breakup song.
Oh my God. And you just hear it and you kind of laugh oh my God, I'm so glad that phase of my life is over. But okay. Bye 2015. Yeah, that's so funny.
I love this conversation because it's a little bit taboo. Before we got on and decided what to talk about, I was like, yes, this is juicy. And it's not as much juicy as it is just kind of one of those people have these conversations maybe behind the chair. And these are things you talk about probably with your stylist, honestly.
Oh,
these are
yeah.
things that you're going through, but people don't talk about them as much in public. It's almost like these whispers of what's happening. And it doesn't need to be shameful. And it does need to be talked about. And if your friend is going through this, understand if they're acting weird or they seem to be struggling. They probably are. Maybe you need to just say, hey, I see that you're hurting and maybe I can pick up something for you. But I think that we all deal with loss. So however that looks, the grieving period, we can act in different ways. But I think it's a really important topic to talk about here.
Well, and I would say as a hairstylist and as a friend to someone who's maybe you're on the other side, you're not going through it, but you are a friend to them or a stylist. And it's very often that people get a divorce. The way they look changes, the way they act changes. They go out differently. They get a different job. I mean, they are in this phase of reinventing themselves because their life just blew up all over the freaking place. And they're trying to pick up the pieces and put it back together in some way. So I would say, as someone who went through that, I had some friends not show up and they kind of disappeared. And I think it's because they didn't know what to do. So I've forgiven them in my own head. They don't even know I was mad. So I was mad at you. Now I'm not. It's fine. And so I would say if you are that hairstylist or you are that friend, just by not piecing out, that is a great way to show your love and support. And you may not understand, but just be there and be loving and listen. That's my advice, because you're not going to understand the way they handle it, the dynamics of a marriage, what really happened. Everyone's side is different. Don't take sides because everyone's realities are different. And so as hairstylists, as friends, just don't leave them.
Totally. So true. I think one of the best, some of my best friends that helped me through were just non-judgmental. And when I needed advice, it was more what do you think? Listen to yourself, listen to your own, because they're not in my shoes. And so it was those people that really I wanted them to give me an answer, but I also needed to make my own decisions and answers. So even you, when you were trying to decide whether or not you were going to do it, it was look, how about, it's offer scenarios, but I wasn't going to tell you need to or you don't need to or make the other person the enemy, because what if you stayed? So, you have to be really careful as a friend too, because things could end up working out and then you're going to feel like a jerk if you're I told you should leave that loser.
I feel the best advice is just be there, be loving, be non-judgmental, be an ear to listen to, and love them either way.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you're going through this, all the love, all the light towards you. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Have grace. And it's okay. And listen to Stronger. Actually, if you have been through a divorce or you're going through a divorce, I want to know what song is your divorce song.
There's a Carrie Underwood song. I just heard it now. It would have been my divorce song. I think it's called Unbreakable.
Oh, I love that. There are so many songs I hear now that I feel could be a great divorce song. I wish we should make a divorce playlist. I actually love that idea.
Spotify playlist.
Oh my God. So someone please write in your divorce songs, and we are literally going to put together a divorce playlist. Love it.
Love it.
Thank you for being here. Again, Danny, you are everything love and light and awesome, badassery, all the things. So we love you. We will have all of the places to find Danny, connect with Danny, hire Danny, hang out with Danny, say hi to Danny, whatever the hell you want to do with Danny. Date Danny. I think she's on Bumble. That will be in the show notes, and you can find her there. Thank you for being here on Hair Love Radio. As always, we hair love you.
Hair, love, radio.